Plagiarism versus copyright infringement. Disclaimer: the FAU Libraries and its faculty, staff, and administration are not attorneys and cannot interpret the law. This information is provided for educational purposes only and does not substitute for advice from legal counsel. Today's goals for this presentation are to define plagiarism, its characteristics, and how to minimize it, describe copyright infringement and also how to minimize it, and outline the differences between plagiarism and copyright infringement. The intended audiences for this recording are students who want an introduction and faculty and instructors who want pointers. A discussion on plagiarism and copyright infringement will make better sense when intellectual property and its part in education is mentioned. The World Intellectual Property Organization defines intellectual property as creations of mind such as books, music, inventions, logos, and more. Intellectual property, also known as IP, is frequently used in education. For assignments, students use sources to support the points they make. In instruction, it uses materials for teaching purposes, with instructors directing students on using sources. Finally, creative, scholarly, or technical works also use intellectual property and the work of others for information and to inspire new ideas. The correct use of IP is guided by legal and ethical considerations, both of which are often misunderstood or not known. Now we will talk about plagiarism and copyright infringement. Students, scholars, and creators of work should understand these concepts to minimize plagiarism and infringement, to respect the work they make, and to ethically reuse the work of others. Instructors should be familiar with these nuances so they can advise and educate others. To do this, we encourage an ethics-based approach and to model good practices towards intellectual property. We will next describe plagiarism, looking at its definition, concept, when it becomes a problem, and how to minimize risk. Plagiarism is defined as a failure to attribute sources or expressed ideas used as foundational inspiration or new information for new works or insights. In other words, it is taking the work done by someone else and passing it off as your own. As a concept, it is an ethical issue regarding intellectual honesty. It has to do with academic and disciplinary norms about using the work of others. Examples of plagiarism include instances of copying and using the work of others without or using incomplete attribution. This happens when someone else's work is used but the work is not cited. Self-plagiarism is another form where someone uses the work they had done for another project or assignment and turns it in for another. To minimize risk of plagiarism, attribute the work of others and cite your sources. Also, proper paraphrasing or summarizing the information you use from other sources is very important. Use just enough information you need to make your point or support your argument. Finally, follow the rules as defined in a citation style such as MLA or APA. You may also refer to other relevant policies such as assignment requirements. More on plagiarism. Plagiarism can occur with multiple types of work. It is frequently known with textual works like literature, poetry, but also computer programs. Music can be plagiarized in the form of their lyrics or the compositions. Images may also be subject to plagiarism, with examples being photographs, graphics, and drawings. Plagiarism, however, does not occur in the following scenarios. When using a common cliché or saying without attribution, that is not plagiarism. An example may be, "Curiosity killed the cat." Using a widely known or easily verifiable fact without attribution is not a form of plagiarism, such as the fact that the Earth revolves around the Sun. Plagiarism also does not take place when someone appropriately uses another's work, attributes it, and has what is used support a point. Next, we will introduce infringement. Infringement is defined as an act of not following the terms of copyright or the rights it gives creators. Copyright gives creators the rights to copy, perform, distribute, and sell their work. As a concept, copyright infringement is a legal aspect of certain types of intellectual property. This has to do with copyright laws. Examples of copyright infringement include using, copying, distributing, or redoing a work that is copyrighted without permission. Another type of copyright infringement is to use a work beyond the limits of a copyright exception as dictated by current copyright law. Fair use is an example of a copyright exception. Another example of copyright infringement is to falsify copyright or a Creative Commons license. You can minimize the risk of infringement by appropriately using a copyright exception after careful consideration. You may also get permission to use a copyrighted work if your use does not qualify for an exception, and you should also keep track of that. Finally, copyright attribution is important once you do get permission. Infringement can happen with various types of work, just as it can with plagiarism. Text, music, and images can be infringed, and so can digital works such as MP3s and streaming videos. Infringement, however, may not occur in the following scenarios. When a work is not protected by copyright, maybe its copyright expired, the type of work may also affect whether or not infringement does not happen, such as using a public domain work which does not have copyright protection, a fact, or something that cannot be copyrighted, such as a plain vector or a list of contents. Infringement may not occur when permission is obtained from the copyright owner and the terms of the permission are followed. And finally, a copyright exception or another statutory license was appropriately used, such as fair use, for sale doctrine, or a license like Creative Commons. This chart compares the two concepts side by side. A link to it is provided at the end of this recording. For additional information on plagiarism and copyright infringement, visit these pages that provide authoritative sources of copyright and plagiarism information. If you are at Florida Atlantic University, you may also contact your campus library.